Good evening, viewers. Another episode, another guest. Today we are honored that we have our special guest, Saleh Alnoud. He qualified as a solicitor in Sheffield, but he born in Yemen. He has keen interest in politics and human rights. Welcome in our show.
Thank you, Mohammed.
Could you please tell us about your early days and qualifications?
Well, I think my early days, first of all, thank you, Mohammed, for inviting me to your show. I'm very pleased to be here. As for my early days, I grew up in Yemen up to the age of 12. And then I joined my father, who lived in the UK since the 50s, when he came to work in the steel industry with so many other Yemenis. And from the age of 12, I've been living in Sheffield, and I can't imagine living anywhere else. I've gone to school in Sheffield, college, university, qualified in Sheffield, and I'm working in Sheffield now, so I'm very happy to be in Sheffield.
Thank you very much. So which area of law do you practice?
I practiced, my main speciality is in crime, and that's really what I've been doing for the past 10 years. However, recently, me and a colleague of mine set up our own little venture, and we specialise in crime as well as immigration, and also minor benefits, housing, citizens' law issues, really. So, yeah, but primarily crime is my area.
So we will start with the criminal law questions today.
Certainly.
So first of all, I will start with stop and search.
Mm-hmm.
What are the police powers in stop and search, and what is the right of a citizen in both scenarios?
Well, stop and search as a power for the police is crucial for them to be able to do their job. And I don't think there is any issue with the fact that these powers exist. However, the problem is sometimes how those powers are actually put in practice. So in response to the question, the police have the power to stop an individual who they have reasonable suspicion may possess items or may be involved in criminality in some way or another. For example, if they suspected an individual had drugs on them, or a weapon, or any other item which could be used in crime, then the police have the power to stop the individual and search the individual. The individual, however, has to be clear that the police are carrying out the search, the stop and the search properly. So the police will have to be forthcoming with information such as the reason for the stop. They will have to give their names, their rank, their collar numbers to the individual, and they have to be very clear to the individual why that individual is being stopped. From then on, there's nothing really to stop the police officer conducting a stop and search if those suspicions are there. And therefore, what the individual should be wary of is how those powers are exercised and how the stop and search is affected by the police officer. And things to look for is really whether the police officer is conducting himself properly, speaks in the proper manner to the individual, without really putting any pressure that is unnecessary for the purposes of the stop and search. If the individual feels that the officer has gone beyond the powers allowed for him in stopping and searching him, then the individual can ask to take the matter further, really, and inform the officer that he's intending to take it further, make any comment about the way the officer has carried out the search, and there are therefore, following that, certain remedies that the individual can resort to, including a complaint at the police station, a complaint through a solicitor, a complaint if there were issues regarding race or anything of discriminatory aspect to the stop and search, then certainly the Race Equality Council and various other organisations can assist those individuals. So I think it's fair to expect the individual to be treated properly by the officer. The officers will have to do their job, and they will do that. And the most that one can expect from the individual is to be wary that those officers conduct the search properly and without any excessive use of that power against that particular individual.
Thank you. See, another question, but related to first question. Is there any difference if somebody has been stopped publicly, let's say in a public place? So what are the modes and what are the guidelines for the police officer if he or she is conducting this in public place?
Well, a lot of the stop and searches do take place in public, and you could be stopped on the street in a car or at a place at a premises. If it's conducted in public, then the police officer have to be diligent in the fact that they don't expose that individual to excessive exposure to the public. The officer has to deal with the situation sufficiently for him to obtain the information that he seeks to obtain from the individual. If that was in public and the actual stop and search in public was to draw further attention that could escalate the situation further, then the officer would be expected to conduct the search discreetly, to take steps to avoid a situation where the public are or the individual is exposed to the public glare. And that's something that the individual can seek from the officer. He can certainly say to the officer, "Officer, you can do your job. However, I would ask you to do it discreetly. I would ask you to do it in a way which does not expose me to any issues beyond what you seek to have from this particular search." If that wasn't the case and the officer continues to deal with the individual in such a draconian way that the individual thought it was not right, then the individual again can take it further and make a complaint about that.
Thank you very much. We'll take it further. If somebody after the search has been arrested, what are their rights? Quickly, because for our viewers, I feel it's important that people should know their rights. So what are their rights?
Okay. If you're arrested, I mean, there can be also a scenario whereby you are questioned without being arrested. But if we just simply deal with the arrest possibility, if you're arrested, then you are taken to a police station. Being arrested doesn't mean that you're handcuffed and forced in a way that you sometimes see in movies. Being arrested simply means that you are now subject to a particular process, which involves you being taken to a police station, put before a custody sergeant, documented and placed in custody until the evidence is gathered, and that can be by way of an interview that takes place at the police station. Most importantly, the rights available to the individual is when you're arrested immediately, upon being arrested, you must be given the caution, which is, I'm sure people have heard it before, you don't have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you don't mention when questioned something which you later rely in court. So anything you say after that caution can be used in evidence later on should the matter proceed, go to a trial, for example. So, for example, if after the caution you say, yeah, okay, I admit or I deny or whichever term that you use, that can be referred to sometime later during the interview process or subsequently during a trial if the matter was to go to court. So I would also advise people to refrain from making any comments after the caution until the full extent of the evidence is disclosed at the police station in the presence of a solicitor. When you're arrested, you're taken to a police station and you are given 3 rights. First right is to speak to somebody to say that you are under arrest, you've been arrested in the police station. That can be a relative. The other right is that to speak to a solicitor on the telephone or in person, to wait for a solicitor to attend. And the third right is to be given the code of practice, a copy of the code of practice, which explains your rights whilst in detention. Most important right of those, in my opinion, is the right to have a solicitor present. And you are therefore entitled to request for that, and no action should be taken against you in terms of interviewing you, for example, until the solicitor is present at the police station. And I would always recommend that people ask for solicitors as soon as they are arrested at the police station. It is a right that you're entitled to and free of charge as things stand.
Thank you very much. What is the position if somebody has been part of this criminal investigation and has been asked to attend an identification parade? Can he or she refuse to attend it, or it is compulsory to them to be part of this identification parade?
Identification parades are very important to the police process these days, and where there is a dispute over the identity of the suspect, then often, and a description is provided by a witness, then what happens is that the individual is put on an ID parade. Often you will be asked whether you are consenting to an identification parade. You don't have to attend an identification parade. The issue with that, however, is that the police can go on and conduct what's called a covert identification parade, which means that they have a picture of yours and they then set up the parade without your involvement in any way in that setting up. Currently, the parades are done by videos whereby you attend, a capture of your image is taken live, looking forward to the left and to the right, and then you have a say in choosing the 8 other people that will be alongside you on the parade. So taking part in the actual ID parade, in the preparation of the parade, is useful in that sense that you are taking part in preparing the compilation. If you refuse to go on an identification parade, that is something that can be used against you later on, should the matter proceed to trial, in the sense that they will say he refused to attend an identification parade, and the court can draw inferences from that as to why he didn't do that.
So it means it can go against you?
It can. I mean, the way the identification parades are conducted in South Yorkshire, I would always, generally speaking, recommend that people do cooperate with the identification process, unless given legal advice because of certain aspects regarding the case. But generally speaking, it probably does more harm not to take part in the parade than it does good.
Thank you. We'll quickly proceed for our further questions. What is the position of a suspect if he or she wants to keep themselves silent during the police interview? So what are their rights? Can they do so?
Of course, if we go back to the caution says you don't have to say anything. And that is a right of yours. You don't have to say anything. But of course, with that, it says that if you don't say anything and the matter was to proceed to court, for example, then your silence can be taken into account. So inferences can be drawn from your silence as to say, why has he not said anything in response? However, the exercise of silence is often a very useful tool when advising individuals at the police station for solicitors. Your solicitor will advise you as to when it is in your best interest to exercise your right to silence and when not to. There is a myth amongst people that if I don't say anything, the police have nothing against me. In fact, at times it is very important that you say something, because if you are presented with evidence which puts you in the picture or under suspicion, then it's important that you have the say. If you have a defence, it must be put forward at very early on in the process, because if you don't mention it at the police station during the interview and the matter goes on to court, and then in court you mention it, then the court will say, well, you had a chance to say it at the police station and you didn't say it. Therefore, the relevance and the weight of that evidence will be diminished. So in response to your question, yes, you can exercise your right to silence. If you don't have a solicitor, I would always say that exercising the right to silence is very useful. But if you have a solicitor present, then they will advise you as to the best way of dealing with that aspect of the investigation.
Thank you very much. Now we are coming towards another very important aspect of criminal justice system, about the convictions and police caution. If somebody has been cautioned, and so what will be the effects of this? And subsequently, if somebody has a conviction in the court, so what will be effects in coming days or in future for that individual?
The caution at the police station can only be given where you have admitted guilt and you have no previous convictions, or your convictions were so old that effectively you don't have any previous convictions. And that is a caution which is out of court disposal, basically to give you a chance, given that you've admitted the offence. That is in itself not a conviction. However, for certain requirements nowadays, having a conviction, having a caution can have an impact on certain aspects of your life. For example, if you have a caution, which means that you get it at the police station, you don't go to court, and if you were to go on to work, to want to work as a teacher or a nurse or a doctor or a lawyer, then that becomes part of the extended search, and it can have an impact on your career aspirations. Another effect that the caution would have is on your immigration applications. When it comes to applying for citizenship in the UK, there are certain requirements, and one of which is that you must not have been involved in criminal activity. Now, depending on what the caution was for, and the length of the age of the caution, that can also be taken into account. So people should be aware of the fact that the cautions are not simply not being done, or you are actually something is being recorded against you, and it will always be on your record until it's spent. Usually cautions are, well, they always remain on your record, but you don't have to declare them after a certain period of time. So the myth that these cautions are not going to affect people, it's not true, and people should be very wary about whether to accept guilt in order to get a caution, because there may be consequences because of that.
Thank you. How you see the two criminal justice system, one in Yemen and one in Britain? So how you see them, comparative studies? Shortly, how you see them?
This is no comparison. I think you have in the UK a very rigid, very systematic system, very coherent system that works in tandem, works very well. Give or take certain remarks we could make about the system at different stages. When you compare it to the Yemeni justice system, I think Yemen generally has problems, from politics to societal to, and the legal system in Yemen is a victim of that. Corruption is a disease, and if the legal system is corrupted, then you can't really regard it as a legal system. So I think, in order to answer your question, we'll probably have to have a seminar where we will spend hours and hours going over that. But very different systems.
Thank you. We will have our discussion on that special subject. Now, coming towards your choices, your favorite food?
Favorite food? I'm a traditionalist. I like Yemeni food. There's a few dishes. I don't know if you've tried them, Mohammed, any Yemeni dishes, but
one day, when you will offer me, I will try this.
Yeah, absolutely. We have. I don't know if anyone's heard of this. The viewers may not be familiar with this, but we have the certain type of dish which is rice-based, but it's cooked in a tradition called zurbiyan, and it's very nice. And I probably would say that is my favorite. And
your favorite sport?
Football. I have to say I'm a very, very avid supporter of football. I play football as well as much as I can. So yeah, I enjoy playing and watching it a lot.
And your favorite place?
I visited Mecca 4 years ago, and I heard a lot. Obviously, I read a lot. I've seen a lot, but I never thought it would be so tranquil and so peaceful. And I would have to say that it was Mecca. Yes.
Thank you. And how you see that, because you have seen changing the process of legal aid and our criminal justice system or civil justice system, how you see the impact of removing or curtailing the legal aid from the justice system?
I think it's catastrophic. I think it's going to change the shape of the legal systems, particularly the criminal legal. I'm more familiar with the criminal aspect of the criminal legal aid changes. And I think if you ask any criminal lawyer, top of their list of worries is the changes and what they will mean. There will be job losses. There will be not only that, the client will suffer. I think it's got to a stage where it's unworkable, and only time will tell how terrible it will be for the system as a whole.
Thank you. And at the end, what is your message for our viewers?
To really know their rights, to be real. These are very important times, very sensitive times. The community has a lot of challenges, the Muslim community in Sheffield generally, society, there's a lot of, the media tries to segregate people. We should all work towards keeping faith, keeping close to one another as communities, and try and overcome these difficult times that the right-wing media will always try and create problems and divisions. But we must ride it out and hopefully overcome these problems without any further difficulties.
Thank you very much for joining me, and I hope in coming days we will join you again. Viewers, this was Guest with Nazir. I hope you have enjoyed today's episode. If you have any questions, please send me your emails and we will try to answer your questions. Keep watching Sheffield Live. Thank you.